If I was born 5,000 years ago, I would believe in God. And odds are, you would too. Not because we're foolish, not because we're uneducated, but because this is all we knew. Ancient civilizations believed that gods controlled the sun, rain, and their harvests. When their crops failed to yield or famine struck, they didn't see random chance. They saw intention, they saw design, and most importantly, something above them.
Today we can look back on their beliefs and write them off as nonsense. But I think the real question isn't why they believed, it's why don't we anymore?
This thought first occurred to me when learning about ancient civilizations like the Incas and the Mayans. While they differed heavily in what they practiced, they shared the common belief that higher beings controlled the universe, the sun, the rain, and even time itself. There is an ancient Mayan text called the Popol Vuh that describes their gods needing to be fed through sacrifice in order to keep the world moving. When droughts came, when crops failed, when floods ravaged through villages, the thought wasn't bad weather. It was we who upset the ones above. So they used what they had and sacrificed people. And before we cut to conclusions and condemn the crazies, we have to ask what we would have done in their shoes. If our families were on the brink of death from famine, disease, and catastrophic weather conditions, does sacrifice now seem out of the picture? Today we don't practice these ancient beliefs, not because of divine intervention, but because we have the science behind weather patterns and agriculture. And once we understand the why behind this phenomenon, the God that once lived there slowly slips away. Once I noticed this, I couldn't stop seeing the pattern. Every ancient culture before us placed God where their knowledge stopped. In ancient Greece, they placed Zeus as the cause of thunder and lightning. The Epic of Gilgamesh described floods as a form of divine punishment. And the Bible describes disease and famine as punishments from God. I'm not saying that any of these civilizations are incorrect for thinking this way. What I'm suggesting is that belief grows in the absence of explanation, every single time. The need for God exists in the gaps. As these gaps closed, belief didn't get argued away. There just didn't exist a purpose for it anymore. This brings me to when science started doing a better job than God. For most of observable human history, humans used prayer as a form of medicine. Remembering what I said earlier, disease wasn't bacteria, it was divine punishment. And when the 1800s rolled around, scientists such as Louis Pasteur proved that invisible organisms are the reason we get sick. Not demons, not curses, and not vengeful gods. The reason is something that we can not only conceptualize, but understand and run tests on to prove our thoughts, which is something not possible in the existence of just being divine. This single discovery of bacteria wiped out entire categories of miracles. We didn't stop praying because we became arrogant, we stopped because antibiotics worked better. Modern scientists explain this best. Take Stephen Hawking talking about the universe. He said that because we have laws like gravity, the universe doesn't require a creator to explain its existence. And when I first heard that, it really clicked that God wasn't disproven in any way. He just wasn't needed anymore. And if that's true, if God fades as our understanding grows, then the question isn't about the past anymore, it's about the future. Because belief fades every time that our understanding grows. Our next question becomes, what happens as we keep expanding our knowledge more and more? It isn't that far-fetched to say that God hasn't disappeared, but that he's been slowly pushed into fewer gaps in modern society.
As science advances, the belief in God does not vanish all at once. Rather, it hides in the most unanswered questions.
Concepts like consciousness, why there's something instead of nothing, why even existing feels like it matters at all, are all places that God still lives. But this is where our history suggests something uncomfortable. Every time we've said, this is where God must be, science eventually follows and offers an explanation. If this pattern continues, then these concepts may not stay mysterious forever. Which leads me to a thought that has piqued my curiosity. What role is left for God? Not in a way that is hostile, or even to bring about defensive habits, just practically. This brings up my own personal thoughts on this whole topic. I wonder if belief isn't really eternal, but transitional for human history. As far as we are aware, we are the most developed species in the entire universe. We are the first beings that possess comprehension that is capable of asking existential questions. I perceive this as a double-edged sword, because on one hand we are cursed with being alone in this infinite void of matter, but we are also blessed with the capability to ask and conceptualize what is really happening. Another thought that follows this is how future generations might see us. It's easy for us to look back at past generations and struggle to understand how they lived and believed what they did. How they could be so confident in gods that were satisfied only by blood. But imagine that one day, thousands of years in the future, people look back at us this way. Imagine that future humans look back on our religions, our philosophies, even our science, and ask how we could be so sure. Every generation thinks it's arrived at the truth of it all, until the next one comes along and reframes it. Maybe we aren't standing at the end of belief, but somewhere in the middle of it. And that's where I land on all of this. Not with the claim that God is fake, not with the confidence that belief is stupid, but with the idea that belief changes as understanding changes. God didn't disappear. He just became harder to find. And maybe that's not a failure of faith, or a victory of science, but simply the cost of learning more about the world we live in. If you watched the end of my video, thank you. This is my first ever video essay, so I would appreciate feedback in the comments. Let me know what you enjoyed, and please come around for the next one. Thank you.